First of all, self-grasping in its grossest level is the equivalent of what we, I think, would in common conversations would say egotistical. Yeah, when we say someone's so egotistical, rarely do we find ourselves going, I'm so egotistical. It's often with reference to somebody else. So egotistical. So that's the grossest level of self-grasping. At the most subtle level of self-grasping, it is something really, really, really subtle. It's so subtle that in some ways, you could say it has a certain functional reason insofar as we are operating, still on this subject object based reality. There's that most subtle level of self-grasping that is still there, that will continue to be there, that which we should not, on the one hand, think that we are free from yet, and on the other hand, lament over or beat ourselves over it. Because on that level of self-grasping, there's no like overt moral, ethical, in the normal sense of us using that word when we associate with that person or that behavior is so egotistical. Yeah, by the time it gets to the level of what we call so egotistical, it has like very clear implications on basically the consequences of your actions upon other people. Yeah, so there's that level of egotistical. But on the very subtle level, that kind of self-grasping, we would otherwise, outside the context of the path, would almost say it's a given.
It's a given.
It's a given. Yeah. Yes. Like, otherwise, how would you function? We wouldn't say that. But from the perspective of the Buddhist path, even that has to be cleansed. We say purified, has to be cleansed, has to be cleared as that final obstacle, final thing that stands in the way between us and the enlightened state of being. So this is just kind of a big footnote when we say self-grasping. Understand that it's not just referring to what we would otherwise call egotistical or egotistical behavior. So anyway, don't be so predictable. It's about the grosser levels of behavior that emerges from having a big ego, that emerges also from not necessarily ego, or the way we use the word egotistical, but simply what we have so habituated to, like when we have, when someone says something we don't like, we get offended. So here it's saying, don't be so predictable along those lines. It's not saying don't be so predictable in not reacting to provocations. That's a good, if it has become, your standard, your natural response is not to react to when people, when you feel unhappy, or you feel insulted, you don't react. If that has become second nature, that kind of predictable is good. The predictable spoken of here is talking about how we predictably bite the bait, the bait of suffering. The next line I have, don't retaliate. That's the translation I have. Don't retaliate with the agitation of hurtful speech. So something to kind of take note or to say is that many of these lines here, they have some overlapping. So don't be surprised. Yeah? So let me look for where we are. Sorry. Trying to find my text. Avoid poison. Yeah. Okay. So this agitation of hurtful speech, hurtful talk. So this is the kind of speech that is intended to hurt and to harm. So it says, don't retaliate with that kind of speech. Do not answer others' insults with your own insults for them. In one commentary, it also says, also don't, like when you are injured, when you are hurt, then go like respond with like, you know what, this person has this fault, which I think like a lot of these, what you should not do, like we're sitting here now, it all makes perfect sense, but point 6 and point 7 is when two people are involved. Yeah. Two or more people are involved. Then when we are lost in those situations, then a lot of these things that here it reminds us not to do, I think we habitually kind of find ourselves in. So still for us, the main training is like in the point number 2. The main training, meaning like the formal training, is in point number 2. And that formal training is to have implication in our day-to-day lives. Point 6 and point 7. Are going the contents of 6 and 7 then goes through the things that we should try to remember as we enter into community with others. There's a Chinese word that is often translated as kindness, benevolence, human-heartedness. Yeah, so those are the various translations for that word. It's an important kind of like concept in Chinese culture, Chinese philosophy, Confucianism, emphasizes a lot the need to cultivate this human-heartedness, kindness, benevolence, kind of a central kind of concern in that tradition. That character, the character that represents that notion, it's a very simple character. It has only 4 what we call strokes. All Chinese characters, you can count them as number of strokes. This has only 4 strokes, and this 4 strokes can be divided into 2 parts. Draw a vertical line down. One side, which is called the radical. I don't know, these are all kind of technical terms. And the radical is a human, the character for human, which is just as simple like that. This line going side and then down. So that's the radical. That's literally just human. And then the next part, the other part is the word for literally 2, like 1, 2. Yeah. So this word for human-heartedness or kindness or benevolence or warm-heartedness is represented by a character that puts together human 2. And so the commentary often given for this is this quality is found, is exercised, should turn up when 2 persons interact. 2 persons. So it's a social, it's a social experience. In that way, you could say, it's based on this duality. So duality is not, always bad. I mean, sometimes we talk about non-dual, 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 and in fact, we're just talking about non-dual. We don't really know what it means, It's just like, another word for God, but non-dual won't evoke, the guy with the beard that is judging. So we like now non-dual, But duality, I think the way Vajrayana handles duality is not to pretend that, there isn't on the relative level subject and object. Then it's like how to elevate the relationship that this subject is having with this object is how we approach and get closer to non-duality. So absolute bodhicitta trains us in the wisdom of non-duality. Relative bodhicitta trains us in skillful duality. So the skillful duality is especially treated in point 6 and point 7. This is when we enter into a relationship with others and how to, conduct ourselves, the do's and the don'ts, to be most supportive of, again, of realizing or succeeding in our training, the main training, which is the training in the 2 bodhicittas, the relative training of love and compassion, and the absolute training of wisdom. And so these 2 have to be held together, not so much in a way that mushes them together that you can't tell, that you just have, again, non-dual, but they are held together in what I like to call, or we should hold them together in what I would like to call like a creative tension. That we should not have this like blurry non-duality that just involves basically numbing everything, blurring everything. And as long as we keep it like that, which is another word for keep it superficial, then it's easy to be all mystical and, and non-dual. But when you have to pay bills, you have to go to board meetings, you have to go to turn up at work. This relative bodhicitta aphorisms, these one-liners in 6 and 7, really helps us in real life situation. How do we apply the Dharma? So this avoid the agitation of hurtful talk. How often have we found ourselves basically biting back when we feel that we are being threatened? And it says here, don't do that. Don't respond to others' insults with your own set of insults, and then don't uncaringly call attention to other people's faults. Uncaringly, if you're in a position to point out someone's faults because they are receptive to hearing your perspective, your feedback, then it is important to give feedback, because sometimes because we're not comfortable doing that, then we avoid. Then of course, then our relationship with others also superficial. Yeah, fine line. But then if we don't exercise it with care, then we will never be able to kind of walk the talk, So 6 and 7 is really about walking the talk. And most of it, there aren't anything that is so profound. You could say that this is about vastness of heart. So that's relative bodhicitta, the vastness of your actions. Not just the heart, but the heart as it translates into actions, the vastness of action. Training in absolute bodhicitta is the profundity of view. So that which is profound and that which is vast are the two aspects of the Buddha's teachings that we are training through this Mahayana Lojong in 7 points. So here in 6 and 7, what's in the foreground is more the precepts and the commitments for especially relative bodhicitta, especially when two are interacting. When you are interacting with the world, how should you carry yourself? How should you protect yourself and protect others? Do not lie in ambush is the next line, the translation that I have. So this is in one of the commentaries, it's saying, do not lie in ambush. In some ways, right? It's similar to do not expose others' weak links. The next line, don't strike at weak points, even more connected to the, do not expose other people's weak points, related. Here, do not lie in ambush, don't lie in ambush. There, in one of the commentaries, it says, this is about, when someone has wronged you, or you perceive that someone has wronged you, don't keep it in your heart and wait for when conditions give you the upper hand, and then you strike. So it's not just talking about the striking part, lie and ambush, right? It's also pointing to how we often keep, these insults. We keep these uh, wrongs that people, we keep a ledger of it, and that's taking up, kind of precious real estate. Our mental space, so to say, right? Our psychic energy gets drained when we lie in ambush. Don't strike at weak points. So don't strike at weak points. Again, very much related to that earlier point. Don't expose other people's hidden faults. Interestingly, in the commentary I'm looking at, here it says, it brings up a kind of an interesting, it says, don't use mantras. So you could say, like, don't use like ritual magic to weaken others. Yeah. It's not a world that you and I are so familiar with, I would say. But definitely in Asia, there is more of this sort of experiencing this kind of reality, where ritual magic very much still is part of people's explanation for why things go wrong and how you could get ahead. Many parts in Asia still have, so that mantras, in a way you could see, even from the Buddhist perspective, the more kind of, I don't know how to put it, the more orthodox or whatever, Buddhist explanation. Yes, sure, of course, mantra can be used to harm, in that on some level there's an aspect to, like, say, accumulating mantras. There is an accumulation of energy, power, focus, right? You are focusing your resources, your mental, emotional, psychic resources. Mantra is related to that. Sacred sounds resonating with, energy. So in that sense, there is an aspect to this that is neutral, meaning it could be wedded with altruistic intention, or it could be wedded with kind of non-altruistic intentions. So that chanting certain mantras with certain kind of non-altruistic intentions still will produce results, but these results are kind of harmful. So don't strike others using these kinds of methods. don't transfer a Zeus burden onto an ox. So basically, it's two creatures, two animals, two types of animals of burden, you used to carry stuff in the Tibetan war. Basically, a Ze is a hybrid of cow and yak and wild yak, not just yak, not domesticated yak, but wild yak and and horse, I believe. And they are well known for being very strong, can carry a lot of burden in comparison to an ox. So don't transfer what is a Zeus burden onto an ox. So here, basically, you are the Ze. So don't pass on to an ox what has come your way that you don't like. So don't transfer demerit to others. We talk a lot about transferring merit. Yeah, here it's like, don't put your burdens, on other people. Do not focus on winning. Do not focus on winning. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to win. Do not, next one, do not misuse this as a magical right. And this one, I think, is a good one. As in, so in a context that I think you and I can appreciate, maybe not in the literal sense of magical right, is to say you have to be sincere about this Lojong training. If you're going to take this path, you have to be sincere. So what does that mean? So what that means is, you should not think in terms of like, I'm going to use this to enhance my reputation. So what it's talking about is like, don't turn dharma practice, or more generally spiritual practice, into yet another way to bolster your sense of self, to puff yourself up. Don't do that. That's the equivalent of our equivalent to magical right. Yeah, 12th century, 11th century Tibet, yeah, generally believe, there are individuals with great power who can use magic. Here, magic means the power to compel someone to do things, against their will. Magic. So don't use this, like especially among fellow practitioners of Lojong. Don't use this, as a passive aggressive move. So don't misuse this by turning this into a magical right to compel people to do things for you, even though you're using the vocabulary of for the benefit of others, for the benefit of all. And then incidentally, it also, gives you a more comfortable life, more prestigious life, like don't use this Lojong training. Don't let it turn into manipulation. Don't let it turn into a means of manipulating others. Don't turn gods into demons. How do we turn gods into demons? Again, in our insincerity, our hidden agenda, that's what turns, gods into demons. Instead, we should turn demons into gods. So meaning, like, things that we don't like when they turn up, can we use the principle of deity yoga, of yidam practice, to turn demons into gods? Instead, we turn gods into demons, meaning we turn dharma into non-dharma. Some of you have heard about the famous teaching that's also turned into a supplication and prayer called the Four Dharmas of Gampopa. Now, these days, the Four Dharmas of Gampopa, it's in the form of a supplication. It's may my mind turn to the Dharma, may the Dharma turn into the path, may the path clarify confusion, may confusion dawn as wisdom. May my mind, may the mind turn to Dharma, may Dharma turn to the path, turn into being. In other words, not Dharma is not just theoretical anymore. It has become my method, my process, turn into the path. Then may this path, may this process clear the confusions. And then on the final level, and whatever confusions that are not cleared, may I realize the nature of those confusion, and in that way, even that confusion is dispelled. So wisdom dawns. So it says, may confusion dawn as wisdom. In other words, if you think about dawning, right? What happens during dawn, right, is that when the sun rises above the horizon, then the darkness of confusion is transformed. So that may my mind turn to the Dharma. May the Dharma become my path, my process. The earliest version of this teaching, this supplication, is actually not may my mind turn to the Dharma. Later editors kind of massage that a little. All the earliest records of this pithy teaching has it in a form that is less clean, I guess you could say that. Because there's one word that is repeated, which is that very first line of may my mind turn to the Dharma. It says, may Dharma become the Dharma, or turn into Dharma. May Dharma turn into Dharma. As that first line. Then may Dharma turn into being the path. May the Dharma become my process and not just my theories, my hopes, my ideal, my philosophy. So it has to turn into the path. So what does it mean when it says, may Dharma turn? Turn also has a sense of grow into, evolve into. May Dharma evolve, go along with Dharma. There really Gampopa is speaking to how easily Dharma can be perverted. Gods can be turned into demons due to the power of our self-grasping, the power of our afflictive emotions. That even something as amazing and beautiful as the Dharma can be perverted. So may my Dharma continue to evolve into the Dharma, the reality of things as they are. So may Dharma turn into Dharma. So it's the same as here saying, do not turn a god into a demon.
What?
Yes.
It seems like I've heard the use of Dharma, not necessarily Dharma with a capital D, but the Dharma of blah, 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 much more pedestrian.
The
you
what?
know,
The second part I didn't hear.
It seems like I've heard the word Dharma used in a much more pedestrian way, the Dharma of the situation and so forth, as opposed to Dharma with a capital D, the path of Dharma, but more like the situation.
Chiefly, Dharma carries two meanings in Buddhist texts. One simply is the word that we translate into phenomena.
Phenomena. Okay.
Yeah, just happenings, whatever is happening.
Okay.
So that's more related to what you're talking about. Just the thing that is going on, that's a Dharma, yes. And then there is Dharma as in an object of refuge, as in Buddha Dharma.
Right. And so this slogan, when it says the earlier version, they actually are talking about the path, but in a possibly degraded or perverted way, Dharma going to Dharma. Is that what
yes. It can have that connotation, but from the commentaries, it's really talking about making sure that your Dharma practice, actually Dharma.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and has not deteriorated into something else.
Right.
Yeah. So another read, the one that you are seeing, it's certainly, you can say, another read of that is, for example, the 8 worldly concerns is also called the 8 worldly dharmas. So may my Dharma, right, meaning my limited, confused reality, right, go in the direction of Dharma with a capital D. Yeah, you can also read it that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the smaller d Dharma, could be worldly Dharma. That's a Dharma, the worldly Dharma says, you live in a culture where the worldly Dharma is such that, if you don't respond to someone like taking advantage of you, if you don't respond, right, with force, then you will put everyone in danger. Right? I mean, some people in this world, even now, still live under those circumstances. In that sense, it's their Dharma, like quite understandable. Like the only option there, is to retaliate with a tremendous show of force. But that's the small d Dharma, the small, that has become the Dharma of the people, the community, the context. And so there you can say, may that kind of Dharma turn to Dharma with a capital D, right? We all have our limited, conditioned Dharmas, yes, realities. So may all these realities turn us to reality, capital R, capital D. And then more specifically, in terms of the path, may we not turn gods into demons, meaning all the helpful things that the Buddha taught, don't let them, don't like make sure that in our practice, that they're not perverted. Do not make others suffering the means of your happiness. This, I believe, yours and others, at least in the translation that I have, the yours and the others are kind of put in there to clarify this statement. Literally, the statement is, don't make suffering the means of happiness. So, in the commentary, and it's from the commentary that then, taken the liberty to add, don't make other suffering the means of your happiness. In the commentary, it's a little funny. I think this really, is this commentary is for the context, for a context that made sense. It says, if you have this thought, if my Dharma friends, or just friends, if they die, their food, money, texts, and shrine objects would become mine.
That's true.
Or if my benefactor were to struck by a fatal illness, I will receive plenty of offerings, like their estate will include me, Hmm. So this was, the example, the commentary given in 500 years ago. And for me, I'm saying we often like say, oh, we live in terrible times, you cannot practice, there are so many distractions, la la la. Yes, of course, there's way more distractions now, than 500 years ago. But you know what? 500 years ago, apparently, people need to be reminded, don't sit around thinking, if my Dharma brother dies, I will get his shrine. So apparently, there was a perception that a lot of people are walking around like that. And you think you don't have the good circumstance to practice now? Nonsense. Just excuse. Yes, we have way more distractions now. But we also live at a time where, yeah, I mean, we're not like looking at Casey's shrine and go, wonder when I can inherit, some of those nice statues there. So, of course, we have our own context, yeah. So maybe it is about inheritance, like thinking, oh, some relatives, some parents or whatever, right? That will get that. But more broadly, right? This is talking about don't profit on other people's pain. Yeah, and there's so many levels, right, to minimize that. There are many levels to minimize that, and whatever level that we can be more intentional about not doing that, then it's good. So that can translate to how we consume, what we buy, what are we exploiting. So there are many levels I think we can be more intentional about not making others' pain part of our pleasure. Yeah, so I think most of these one-liners here, they're not very technical. Not much really to talk about. It's more to do and not to do. So all these lines under point 6 is, don't do this, watch out for that, don't do this, and watch out for that. Point 7 is, And it is good to do this. And it is good to do that. And it is good to do this. And it is good to do that. So let's see. Just comments, I think this is much better if more in a discussional mode, not much to teach beyond, to give some context.
I have a comment or a thought.
Hmm?
Especially when you were talking about, don't wait in ambush and don't strike at a vulnerable point. Like, I have certain family members who, like, I can point to who do this all the time. And so the thought is just that it's easy to see in other people.
Yes.
Yeah. But maybe,
Egotistical? Oh, you mean them?
right? But not. It's easy to miss in ourselves, yeah.
Yeah, I think like, we all, I think, hopefully not intentionally, we have grown up in environments that because that's just quote unquote normal, And if you look at it, you see that how much you have changed and how much you have evolved, so to say. And it's quite amazing. You're like, oh, I don't do what they do, And it's okay to pat yourself on that, It's called rejoicing, right? As long as it's not like, I don't do what they do, Yeah, being judgmental about it. And so we can have a little bit of also this, I think, can allow us to have a little bit more compassion for, like, look, this is what they're doing and they don't even see
Yeah.
how their best interest is not being served. Right? Because we don't want to do this and we don't do this for the most part, and we don't want to do this because we can see how fundamentally it's just our interest, our deepest interest is not even being served, right? Then we can actually see their actions as self-harm, and feel that compassion, and so hopefully then what's the point of that compassion? Oh, it makes me warm and fuzzy about myself. Then of course not very useful, right? But if that sense of compassion can give us enough ground to connect with, right, these difficult family members, but without expectations, like it says here, don't have expectations, don't wait for applause, right? One of the lines. And we can maybe, be an element in them making different choices. Maybe. Hard to say. But we can aspire that way.
I like to use them like, I'd go to my doctor for the annual checkup and they say, have you ever fallen down? Have you blah, 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 and it's like, these reminders are like a way to keep assessing myself constantly,
Yes.
I'm in a situation and I find myself feeling competitive towards another Dharma practitioner or something like that. It's like, oh, that's that slogan. Here it comes.
Yes, right. Yeah, so these two lists are good to kind of check, the do's and the don'ts,
Yeah.
And I like to really check my subtle motives. because, there's a lot under there. It's like, what, I have to be true to myself. What am I really trying to do here? What is my motive? And, because I have a sister, who's a Trumpster. She had a birthday yesterday, and yesterday was my mother's birthday too, who I love. And I emailed her, and I didn't get the response that I wanted, because it's just, hasn't worked out between us. I mean, she used to be, oh my God, the most loving. I mean, if she'd get hurt, I would cry.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the most loving, beautiful person in my whole life.
Mm.
And then she changed, and so I have to check my motive. What am I really trying to do here? Am I just letting her know my feelings in my heart, that I do love you, even though I know I'm not expecting anything in return? Or am I trying to change her, or, because I want to do it from the
Right.
from the best place in my heart.
Yes.
And I find with relationships, I've got just crazy friends. No, I mean, I do, not y'all, but like my AA friends, and it's
Not
just,
present company, of course.
yeah, of course. And I mean, it's just difficult to deal with, a lot of friendships, and then you get older and you get picky.
Mm-hmm.
You get really picky. And so, it's just really important to understand also, what is the best thing for me sometimes, I mean, because sometimes you get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And just like you said, it's a fine line.
Mm-hmm.
And that whatever you were talking about that is so true. It is just a fine line, because sometimes we like to fool ourselves and
Yes.
think, well, I'm really this, when maybe there's something else going on.
Yeah, you practice Dharma, and assuming that it's going well. And even when it's going well, it's going right, may the Dharma turn to the Dharma, and then the Dharma, turn into my path. One of the things that you're going to notice is that you'll feel like a little of an oddball, when you go to like the friends that you used to hang out with, or the family reunion, and then you observe all the conversation, and then you're like, wait, who are these people, and that disconnect is going to come up, and you have to at some point say, right, the wisdom side will say, I don't want, to do what these guys are doing. So you need to like be brave enough to seemingly judge, right? Now I don't want. So that's one side, right? But the other side is also, okay, now how can I be good to them? Right? In an effective way. Not like, hey, let me tell you, right? That we know that's not going to work, right? So how to put those two together, like I don't want to be to relate to these folks, how most of my life I've related to them and they have related. We get together, we start gossiping, and we talk about this relative or that relative, and we talk about this friend or that friend. Like, yeah, I think the more you practice the Dharma, and the more you're like, oh, I don't know, I don't have much to say here. So that's one side, I think. Then the other side is like, so how do I now, be good to them and for them, and to what degree is it possible, and also to know the limits of like it's not possible. I think those are things that you will see, you will encounter if you stay on the path long enough. Because the wisdom side says, like, no, you cannot continue to be like them.
One
So
of the
it's a
things,
little,
oh,
yeah, challenging. Yeah, go ahead.
one of the things I found that's kind of humbling is seeing how much I'm affected by those I hang out with,
Yes. Oh, yes.
and that it hurts me to be around those people because I'm agitated. And similarly, like coming to a group like this, it affects me too, in a way where I don't feel that way, where I feel calmer and like I'm able to access something I want to move towards.
Right. Right.
And I'm vulnerable to
Mm-hmm.
those I'm around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why whenever I'm back in Malaysia, I'm a little lost, because there also it's harder to just be in my own space. I don't have my space, right? So I'm always in someone else's space, like my parents, and then like my like old friends, Of course, I have Dharma friends. Then I also have like high school friends, and it's harder and harder, yeah, to be among high school friends. In a way, so I also know if I would bite the bullet and have a makeover, meaning like I formally, become a monk. In the case of Malaysia, then I know then things will change, how people will relate. So that's an interesting side too. I think part of it is they see me as what they have always seen me as, and so they just go business as usual, and so of course it's all the blah 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 blah. So maybe there's something to be said to formalize it, and now you have a makeover, meaning you're no longer in plain clothes, you're not in mufti, and like it or not, you will remind them to not blah blah blah, business as usual.
I always thought that was the driving principle, with Milarepa, always telling people like, go to a cave, go away from everybody,
Yeah.
because there's such a big influence when you have a context like that.
And here at Urban Dharma, this theme has come up a few times, and I'm proud to say, like, those who have been indoctrinated by me long enough, are able to offer others the viewpoint of like, however, in our case, we already have these caves,
Yeah.
because of the way our society has kind of privileged, right? Individuality, right? At a certain age, if your parents could afford it, if not, they still aspire to it. Every child get his or her own room, right? So already we have our caves, but we bring a lot of stuff into our caves. So in many ways, we have really ideal conditions, for good or for bad, right? like the flip side of that is I said, you know, if I die, you know, like it'll be a couple of weeks before anyone discovers that. And I don't mean it in the sense of people don't care, but it's just privacy. You know, privacy is such a, like, you know, oh yes, you know, he's doing his thing and not, you know, like we should not bother him, la la la, you know, like it's so much part of this culture, you know. Whereas Milarepa's culture is like, you know, everybody is checking in, like, you going good? You okay? La, la, you know, like, seriously, you know, you can't shake them off, you know. Especially American, you know, I think even more than maybe European, it's really this, right? This kind of like, go out to the frontier, you know, do your thing. So we actually have, you know, like very good conditions to really, you know, deepen our practice. And even, you know, culturally, if you think you can't be an oddball, wait till you go to Asia. Like it's even harder to be an oddball. It's like a very conforming expectation. Here, you know, be whatever oddball you want to be, and you know, people are just like, oh, yeah, that's it's just weird that way, you know. Because still, you know, even if people don't understand, there is this, yeah, this kind of cultural respect for, like, you know, being odd, relatively speaking. Yeah, I grew up in a different culture, you know, and then I travel and I see, you know, there's still a lot of other places have a lot of expectations of conforming. That's part of community. So community is not always good. I don't know. I live in Nashville. Everybody talks about community, like, oh, we need more community. Yeah, and there's also like, you know, dysfunctional communities.
They're all made up of people.
Yeah, they make out of people. There's lots of dysfunctional people, you know. So like, you know, like worshiping false gods, you know. Skillful community, you know, healthy communities. It's a choice, you know, and to make that choice is not easy. Yeah. Anyway, my point here is, like, insofar as being able to pull back, right, and not have that much that people expect from you, I think the American context is pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And your first trip to Hendrix was how many years ago?
So what?
Your first trip to Hendrix when we met you,
Oh, I don't
how
know.
many years ago?
A while.
Yeah, it's been good ever since.
It's been a while.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm. Yeah, so anyway, these Lojong teachings here, you know, 6 and 7 is really pretty straightforward. When you go to the 7, of course, there's, because it's cryptic, you know, it will say, you know, do this one thing, doesn't tell you what, so you need the commentary, you know, like 2 at the beginning and 2 at the end, you know, things like that. Then whichever the
Yeah.
2 occurs, you know, train in the 3 challenges. So yeah, so there's some unpacking to do there, but otherwise, you know, all of these is really about, you know, now walk the talk.
Hey, baby.
So, you know, again, looking ahead, if people ask or whatever, you know, like we'll have hopefully, you know, more practice sessions, meaning formal recitations. And the thing about formal recitation, some people like it, some people don't like it. We have all kinds, you know. But these formal recitations are, you know, if we don't have a taste of like doing it, then we kind of like keep chasing more information, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to cook, but I want to watch another cooking thing. So that we become professional watchers of people cooking. Because when you actually cook, it feels a little messy. And so part of the program is hopefully, but then also on the other hand, there's always so much to explain. So there's a competition, you know, between, and then we're all busy, you know. It's like can't do a week-long thing at the same time. But building some momentum, you know, by exhausting the cushion, as Milarepa would say. You know. It's better to exhaust, you know, the cushion than to exhaust a pair of shoes. Meaning, don't walk around collecting more information. You know, exhaust the cushion by sitting and doing the practice, and the formal practice. Then doing the formal practice, it's like a controlled environment to yes, in a way, artificially, you know, bring forth those challenges, and then through the practice to get to the other side of these challenges. Monastic communities in Tibetan Buddhism would gather to do group practice. So that's, you know, I guess part of what we're going to do. But that group practice is also based on an understanding that on your own you have your kind of deeper personal practice, whereby the group practice provides like a kind of a boost, you know, to a much quieter, much more individual, and therefore much more in the way personal, you know, work of changing. That the group practice can kind of support that. Yeah. So anyway, I think we'll see. Maybe, you know, more and more I'm thinking, yeah, these practice texts, these sadhanas, you know, like to say to people, you know, you don't need to know everything. And it's not possible to know everything. Just the other day, someone messaged me and said, you know, when I listened to the teachings, I thought, you know, like everything is clear and I understand. And so, but then when I do the practice, then I have some doubts, you know, about this or that. I was like, great.
Yeah.
They were hoping that I would clarify their doubts, you know. I'm like, oh, great. Right? If like doing the practice only brings the result of confirming what you think you already know when you started the practice, then you're not making any progress. Yeah, if I teach you how to swim and tell you, you know, when you swim, you're going to see this, this, and that, And then you just keep seeing this, and that. It's like you're not swimming anywhere. Only when you start seeing other sights, that gives you doubt, I was like, now we know, okay, something is going on. Now you know firsthand, what we're really talking about. And it's good, when you can start feeling that, start experiencing that, firsthand. So to try to explain too much, the practice, because there is a lot of like layers and layers.
I'm curious, is that kind of the meaning of, I mean, like now my Dharma is confusion?
No, your Dharma is not confusion. Say more. Dharma is confusion.
Well, I was thinking of that fourth Dharma, may confusion.
No, make confusion like dawn into wisdom.
Wisdom, yes, but to tolerate the confusion, to learn to be with it and to be with not.
Oh yeah, sure, yes. And knowing that you're turning on the light. Yeah.
And kind of trusting in that.
Yes. Yeah. And knowing, I mean, of course, it's not an absolute statement, right? There are the kinds of doubts that, easily dispelled, and should be quickly dispelled.
Mm-hmm.
And often those are more like informational doubts. Then there are the kind of doubts that arises as basically signposts saying, yes, keep moving. And then you'll come out the other side. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. The informational doubts, that can be cleared and should be cleared early enough, quick enough, easily enough. Then there's a different kind of doubt, that comes as a result of applying the practice. Right? And that, like again, like in the past, they say it's not so easy, to get an answer. So then you need to struggle through it. But as you struggle through, there's also, at least in this tradition, there's also a lot of emphasis on praying to the Guru, whether the Guru is Buddha Shakyamuni, the Guru, Guru Rinpoche, Milarepa, whoever, this principle of Guru, right, that you pray to, you supplicate, as you. So it's a balance of like, I'm going to work through, because there's no WhatsApp, there's no email, there's no, Milarepa and Marpa, right, separated. At some point, Marpa already died, So Milarepa is not looking for answers from some other teacher. He is trusting his process, but he's also always praying to Marpa. Like, come clear this for me, come clear this for me, come clear this for me. So I think this is like, I feel that, if you want to analyze what is going on, it's like, remembering Marpa helps Milarepa to not, get like, be led into confusion. Right? When we say, trust yourself, it could be trusting your confusion. So then he keeps Marpa, his teacher, as a reference point. So he's always praying, right? Superficially, we say praying. But he always has Marpa as his reference point. Now, even Marpa is dead now, or Marpa, at first Marpa was just physically separated, and then after a while, Marpa dies, right? But he never stops, praying to Marpa. But in praying to Marpa, he's not like, okay, Marpa, what's the answer? I have these questions. No, he's working through those questions. He's struggling with them, but he's also trusting that Martha is still involved in his process. So there's two sides, you know, it kind of brings into fruition the result that is Bilareba. In contrast, you know, now I think I don't know. I think we kind of like, I need an answer. I need an answer. I need an answer. You know. Then even if we find someone to give the answer, because it's not coming from our experience, those answers don't stick, you know. In other words, like we're not eating the food ourselves. We just got a menu, you know, faxed to us, or you know, sent to us in an Instagram. I want the answer. I want the answer. You know. But it's like pray to Milarepa, you know, pray to Buddha Shakyamuni, pray to Guru Rinpoche. Then apply the practice, keep working on it, you know, and say, you know, I got this from Buddha Shakyamuni, I got this from, you know, Guru Rinpoche, I got this from Milarepa, you know. So it got to work, you know. I'm working on it, you know, and it's like, you know, and meanwhile, you know, Milarepa, don't, you know, leave me to do this all by myself, you know. I know you're there. And that I think helps. You know, the protection will be there, so that you don't veer off in a tangent of like, I'm going to find the answers myself.
Or like it's really all in the mind, and so this is just so confusing anyway.
Right? Yeah, that's one way to
So,
get
you know, what
veer
can I
off.
do?
Yeah. So that's why, you know, at least in Tibetan Buddhism, there's this emphasis on, you know, pray to the guide, you know, pray to the guru, the principle of the guru, the guide. They are all the great beings that have existed, that exist today. You know. But today we know too much, you know, including knowing that actually matches reality and knowing that doesn't match reality, you know. So then it's becoming more and more challenging, you know. Like who we think of when we think guru. Because they are like fictional characters, you know. Anyway. Okay, I don't have much more to say today, and also I need to run. To not next weekend, the following, right? Is it?
Yes.
That's when I'll come to Little Rock. And yeah, I got a pack for Little Rock and London
Wow.
right after. Originally, I was trying to do the crazy thing of like routing everything so that I don't come back to Asheville, you know. And then it got really complicated real fast. Like trying to find tickets from Little Rock to London, London back to. Yeah. You would think, right? That would, you know, give you a better deal, give them, you know, a break, you know, so that you're not. That's not how it works. Go, come, go, come. They like that somehow. So, okay. Adios.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll be coming next weekend. I'm gonna go to a retreat in